Hello, everyone. I'm ELENA GEORGIou. Welcome to the Global News and to another amazing edition. The Global News brings you the latest news about violence of all forms around the world, causes, types, effects, and possible solutions to overcome them. So today we have an amazing guest, Amanda, and she will share her amazing story with us. Welcome, Amanda, to our show. So happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And please introduce yourself and tell us all about you and your journey. We
Sure.
really want to get to know you.
Okay. Well, my name's Amanda Furness. I am a survivor of child abuse, a former runaway. I have survived human trafficking and domestic violence, rape, many forms of gender-based violence. Also, I've survived single motherhood and poverty, hate crime. I have been a victim in many instances, but I consider myself a survivor at this point. I'm also a writer and a journalist myself. I'm currently working on my autobiography, and I have written one novel called White Girl by Published America. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Why don't you share something about your novel? Share something
Okay.
about it.
My novel was fiction, of course, based on a little bit on my life story, but I think at that point in my life, I wasn't ready to write my own story because it was still so painful. So at this point, I have begun writing my autobiography, which is my own story. And I have some things in common with the protagonist in my novel, but my story is much more complicated and I've endured a lot more than she did. You know, life hasn't been easy for me. I have had many struggles, but I have found a variety of different things that work to help me pull through the pain. And I am determined to try to help other people find peace within their suffering as well. So, you know, I think that my book touches on some of those things.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, from my interaction and my experience, people avoid Amanda to share their story, or maybe they keep things behind. And it's like kind of they're keeping their pain inside and they're not opening up to it. How can they, by your experience also, how did you overcome it and be ready to, and you're ready to share your story now? So we can encourage other people to do that too. What are the
Sure.
ways you overcome it?
Well, I will say that I'm a woman of faith. I'm a Christian, although I study a lot of other religions as well. So I'm open-minded. But I'm a Baptist. I'm a Christian, a Black Southern Baptist to be specific. And I have encountered early on the Holy Spirit during my abuse, and that is how I first came to know God. So, you know, I think some psychologists or psychiatrists would call it a form of disassociation, where when you're being beaten, you separate from yourself and you feel a sense of comfort or something calm come over you. But for me, as a woman of faith, you know, I didn't know what it was at the time, but now as a woman of faith, I understand that to have been the Holy Spirit. And so I can say that, you know, God has, in my moments of true suffering, appeared to me in that form, right? And brought me a sense of comfort and calm like I would have never known otherwise. You know, so I think I was introduced to the church very early on, about age 4 or 5. And that was my first experience with Jesus, so to speak. And I didn't delve deeper into religion until I began to study about the African slave trade and the Holocaust in particular. So as I read about Anne Frank, for instance, you know, and the things that the people as a young girl, middle school, right, was when I was enduring the worst of my abuse at the hands of my stepfather and my mother. You know, I could really relate to the Africans and the whippings that they received and the ways that they were abused by their owners quote unquote. Also, the people in the Holocaust, you know, having to deal with someone who's so out of their mind and egomaniac and cruel with no mercy. You know, my stepfather was a man who had no mercy at all, even for a child. So I came to understand human suffering through those realms, through those, I don't know how to explain that, through those avenues. And I could really identify with that. And so that brought me to gospel music, you know, like the old gospel music that the people who were enslaved used to sing. And that's how I ended up getting saved in the Black Southern Baptist Church. So it's been a long faith journey for me, you know, but I can say that around the time that I began to study slavery and the Holocaust is when I began to question about God and to read Shirley MacLaine and other authors who talk about spiritual matters and reincarnation and things like that. And, you know, I can't say that I believe in reincarnation, but I do believe in, you know, that there exists good and evil in the world. And I knew when I was dealing with my parents, especially my stepfather, that I was dealing with pure evil, you know, and I couldn't come to terms with that and why someone would inflict so much suffering on a child, you know. So you say that so many people keep this as a secret, right? They sit with their suffering, they sit with their pain, and they don't want to let others know that they've gone through that because they feel like it's something that they should be ashamed of. But it's not something that a human being should be ashamed of. You know, you were a victim, especially as a child. You have no one to protect you, you know, and again, you're at the hands of someone who's merciless, even with a child. So I think that this is something that people have to begin to talk about. And the journey, so to speak, is that of coming out of that sense of shame and walking into the light and shedding off all of these layers, you know, like an onion or whatever you want to call it, you know, to say that I want to get back to my core, to my childhood self, who I was in the beginning, sweet and innocent and naive about the world, right? But not wanting to hurt anyone, right? Like most children don't have bad intentions toward others. So, you know, I wanted to get back to that place. And I think my relationship with God has really done that for me. So I would recommend some sense of spirituality, if not Christianity, to someone who's seeking that peace.
Yeah, so they can, and it's a way also, Amanda, to connect and come back home to them because we're dealing around the world, we're dealing with disconnection. And I mean, their disconnection from family members, the disconnection from themselves, and maybe others, maybe friends or whatever, because people cannot connect with others because they have to connect first with themselves. So maybe you can share with us how you managed to come back home to you after all that you have been through, because you had a very difficult and abusive journey, but you're here now telling us about it, and we're trying to encourage other people to speak out and break their silence. What is the way that you came back home to you?
Well,
Except, yeah.
sure. Home is an interesting concept because I think that when you are a child who is abused and you begin to run away from home, which I think I was 7 the first time I tried to run away. And then at 11, I began to run away in earnest. And I was in the streets from 11 until, you know, I turned 18 in my 20s. And excuse me, I still am at a place where I'm searching for or just finding home, and I'm 48 years old. So I'm almost 49. And I think it's taken me that long to be able to discern what home should look like. So the home that I've made for myself now has a lot of things in common with the good parts of my childhood. So for instance, my grandparents on my father's side had a farm, and they were a good example for me of what a healthy marriage looked like. So I was able to spend some time with them on the weekends, even when I was living on the streets and when I was in the projects, I was able to spend time with them sometimes. And, you know, now where I'm at, I'm living in the country and I'm around country people, and I feel very good being in a rural area. I feel safer, right? From the crime of the city and from potential, you know, predators and attackers. I was a runaway, so I was subjected to sexual assault on multiple occasions. I have been a rape victim 8 times in my life and 2 attempted rapes. So, you know, that's a total of 10 sexual assaults in form. And that's a lot, right? But they say that when you first experience sexual assault or you experience sexual abuse as a child, you're 4 times more likely to become the victim of a rapist. So given that I've experienced all of these things as a child, I think it's no wonder that I then was kind of prey for these predators, right, as a teenager. And I was constantly seeking for home. So I tell you about these gospel songs from my childhood, and many of them talk about home. They talk about the need for peace and for resting in the Father's arms, you know, for um, being around love and in a sense of community with others. And I was always seeking that because I never had that. You know, I didn't have that in my family. I still don't have that in my family. And you speak of disconnection. So I'm disconnected from my whole family because of the abuse. And because my siblings don't want to talk about the abuse that they endured. And they've tried to silence me. They don't want me to speak out about it. You know, actually, slavery in my family has been generational. My mother was enslaved as a child to her adopted white grandmother as an indigenous person. So, you know, that became the situation with me and my mother as well. And I have had this very long journey of being her caretaker and trying to find home, but I could never find home with her because of the abuse, you know, and we were never able to heal that because she wouldn't talk about it. So I would say that if you want to reconnect with family, and you want to create a sense of home within your family unit, you have got to be able to talk about the abuse. You've got to be able to be frank about it. You've got to say, this hurt me, this specifically hurt me, this is what you did to me. You have to admit it, and we have to move forward. Otherwise, if nobody will admit it, you can't move forward, and you end up disconnected, like you said, from everyone that you love. And that's a very painful thing. So home has been a long, long journey for me. I've been searching for home for so long. I've tried different communities, different faiths, you know, Rastafarianism, Islam, you know, some, you know, Judaic studies, different sects of Christianity. Where is my home? You know, what community is my community? And the community that I found that I fit the best with is with the descendants of people who were slaves, because they understand what it is like. And do you know that I was reading something about child abuse yesterday? And I was reading that 1 in 7 children in America will be abused. 1 in 7, right? But Black children are 3 times more likely to be abused than white children. And I think that that is a remnant of slavery because of the whippings that people endured at the hands of their masters. You know, this is something that has been passed down from generation to generation. So it's something that I take to my heart very seriously. And I have advocated for Afro-descendant rights, you know, for the descendants of slaves, for their rights all the way up to the UN level, you know, and it's something that I'm very dedicated to. I think that no community should have such a high rate of child abuse, you know, so it's something that I definitely want to work on in the future, and to try to, you know, have conversations with people, even though these are very painful and touchy conversations to have. I think they're conversations that need to be had because we all have healing. When I was growing up, I was beaten with a belt, which was like a whip. I was beaten with willow wood switches, which are like a whip. I was beaten with fly swats and spatulas and all kinds of things like that, right? But I have friends that were beaten with electrical cords, you know, and shoes. and all kinds of things. So, you know, and these were my friends who were Black, and they were beaten with all manner of things. So I think that this is something that's passed down from generation to generation again. And, you know, it's something that's got to stop. And the only way that it's going to stop is if we begin to have these conversations.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I researched about the generational wound and the curse that it is passed. You're right. It is passed from generation to generation. And it just takes one person like you and me to just acknowledge what happened, accept it, forgive, and move on. And
Yes.
then create a new reality in our lives and ourselves. And thank you for mentioning this. This is really a good information for people to know that, you know, we have to just forgive our disempowered parents, because they really didn't, they just got whatever they got, this wound themselves, and they passed it out. It's like we have to forgive and move on.
Yes. It's not easy to do though. It's a very hard task. It really is a journey. And like I said, I think it makes it very difficult to forgive and to heal if your parents will not admit that they abused you, you know? So I can say that, for instance, you know, there's a difference between, excuse me, disciplining a child with just a swat on the bottom with your hand, right? Which some people don't even agree with that, you know, but there's a difference between that, like one time you, because you did something bad, and beating your child with a belt or a switch or a whip or an electrical cord. Those are different things, you know? And so I can say that there was one time in my life when my son did something very bad and I whooped him with my hand very hard. And in the process of doing that, I felt like a monster. And I thought, you know, this is me becoming like them. And I never hit him again after that. You know, I think he was in kindergarten when that happened. And now he's 30 years old, you know. I have to confess that because, you know, that's healing for me. It's healing for him that I know that I did that. And I know that that was generational. It's what was done to me. So, you know, yes, it's very painful to talk about, but you've got to be honest with yourself and with others about the situation. And that's the only way that you can make it better.
Exactly. And there
Yeah.
is a solution, and we can break this circle by being coming back home to us and connecting with ourselves and acknowledging what has happened in this the lineage or history in our family. And if our family doesn't want to connect with us in any way, we don't have to feel bad about it. There are so many wonderful people among us, and that love us and gives us peace, and we deserve that.
I agree.
And if I ask you, you can, you know, you can tell me a lot of people in your life that are loving you and are keeping you, you know, in a place of peace and safety and protection. And all of us has those people, so we're not alone. And God loves us and has always our back.
It's
And
true.
that and before closing, you can share a message to the world. You want to, you know, give your powerful message.
Well, I just think that child abuse is something that is so heartbreaking, you know, because you have an innocent child who looks to you for love and nurturing, and you're the one that's supposed to love them unconditionally, right? So I can say that I was very confused by my mother's hatred of me, but that she didn't want to have me. And for this reason, I think that no woman should be forced to have a child that she doesn't want, you know, because this leads to this type of situation. And I'm not going to say I wish I was never born, but there were days when I felt like that. You know, there were many days in my life where I wished that I was not born because my mother told me many times, I wish I never had you. I hate you. I wish you would die. Horrible things to me, you know? And honestly, it's the verbal abuse more than the physical abuse that wounded me so deeply, and that has taken years for me to get over. So, you know, I guess I would want to say to people that it's about the way that we speak to one another, and that verbal abuse of a child or a spouse or any other human being is hate speech, right? It is hate speech. I believe that the verbal abuse of children is hate speech, and that we shouldn't be speaking to each other in these terms, and we should never speak to children that way. You know, we should never speak to vulnerable people that way, because all it does is set them up to be prey for someone else. So, you know, I was trafficked as a human being. I was sex trafficked. And I will say that that would not have happened to me if the stage hadn't been set for me to be someone else's prey because of the abuse that I endured. So you're preparing your children for adulthood and for life in the world. And if you don't raise them right, if you don't speak love and life into their hearts and their minds, then they go out into the world and they look for those things that will treat them badly, just like you did, because that's all that they know, you know? So you're setting the stage for yet more patterns to take place in your children's lives. And I did always speak love to my children. I never verbally abused them. I can say that, you know, honestly. And I know that they know that they're loved, you know, and that was for me always the most important thing. So I would say to speak love and to speak life to people, all human beings, but especially to your children, because you want them to know positive things and to have an understanding of you as a loving parent.
Thank you very much. This is a very powerful message you have shared. Thank you very much, Amanda, for being here. And know that you're worthy and loved, and your voice must be heard, and your novel and your books must be read. So you can share also if you have a link for your book and anything that you want me to share.
Oh no, I'm still working on it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's
So
in process.
so when you're ready, we can bring you back in the show and make a presentation for your book.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amanda, for being here.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.